Hello to all of you wonderful moms out there. This is episode 34 of the Solve for Mom podcast. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi. Now this episode is going to be full of fun tips. I have an exciting contest announcement, and it also happens to be the fourth and last episode in my Spring into Action series. Have you ever wanted to learn something new, but felt paralyzed by the thought of making mistakes while others are watching? Maybe you've dreamed of taking up painting or learning a new language or even starting a side business, but the fear of judgment has held you back. I know what it's like to feel vulnerable while trying something new. As both a scientist and a mom, I've had to learn countless new skills while others are watching me, from presenting research to fellow scientists to figuring out homeschooling for my kids. Now that's something you can't hide from. Well, that's why today I'm sharing mindset shifts and practical strategies to help you overcome the fear of learning in front of others. You're going to discover how to turn that nervous energy into fuel for growth and make progress on your goals, even when you feel like all eyes are on you. So if you're ready to break free from that fear that's holding you back, let's dive in. Welcome to the Solve for Mom podcast. Do you love spending family time together every day but realize that your own interests have fallen to the wayside? Do you have a long list of things you wish to learn but you're so tired from trying to balance it all on your own and frustrated from not planning ahead to make it happen? Have you been mom for so long that you've lost track of who you are as an individual? Hi, I'm Anoki. I'm a PhD biomedical researcher, homeschooling mom, and life coach. I too poured myself into being a mom and thought I had to stop doing the things that I love to do. I was struggling to make time for myself, had lost my sense of direction, and kept second-guessing myself. I wanted to take back control of my purpose and passions, but I kept telling myself there'll be plenty of time for that later. Until I did what was natural to me. Using the methods of a scientist, I created plans to prioritize my values, organize my time, and take action towards my goals. If you're ready to go questing for your purpose, level up your learning, and confidently pursue your passions while still being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this complex equation we call life, it's time to sharpen our pencils and our minds and solve for mom. So I mentioned a special contest announcement. I am so excited to announce a special giveaway for all of you amazing listeners. One of you lucky winners is going to receive a free 60-minute one-on-one life planning coaching session with me. This is a fantastic opportunity if you've just been curious about life planning and how that can help you achieve your goals. You really have nothing to lose by entering. So there's two ways to enter. It's super easy. You can either leave a review or share your favorite episode. Just take a screenshot of your review or the share and then send it to me by email at hello@solveformom.com or post it in the Solve for Mom LinkedIn group. Don't worry, you're going to find all of the instructions and the links in the show notes. I'm really looking forward to lots of participation and tons of reviews coming in because I know that you guys have been loving this show. But the only way that all of your 5-star ratings and honest reviews can really impact this show is if you actually leave it in the reviews section of the podcast. Your reviews and shares do so much more than just enter you into the contest. Every review that shows up helps boost the show's rankings, and overall, it's going to help me reach more moms that could benefit from these strategies. It can be as simple as this. From one listener who goes by the name of Thoughtful Narwhal, I love the energy and the thoughtfulness in the show. The tips and strategies she presents are so useful. Well, thank you, Thoughtful Narwhal. Your 2-sentence review made such a difference for me, and it warmed my heart. All right, folks. This contest runs until Thursday of this week, May 1st, and I'm going to notify who the winner is on Friday, May 2nd. So don't forget to send me your screenshot or else I won't have any way of knowing who you are. All right, good luck. I'm so excited, and I look forward to all of your 5-star ratings and honest reviews. Have you ever thought about how motherhood basically is this endless stream of personal growth? Every day is an opportunity to learn new things and try new things. But the reality of our mom lives is that learning is done completely differently than when we were students in school, right? Our environments for learning are just so different because they're chaotic, sometimes even loud. It's so hard to get alone time. And everything we do, including learning, happens in these small chunks of time instead of having large blocks of availability. And even those golden times that we often depend on, like when your baby is napping, can actually be more unpredictable than we hope. Like if a baby wakes up mid-nap, especially during regressions or transitions. And as one of my clients puts it, there are little people around all of the time. That is hardly the optimal environment for learning. But if we don't take advantage of these windows of opportunity as and when they present themselves, then we'd never learn anything. Of course, there are ways to help you achieve better learning conditions through planning and systems and organization. So I want you to check out episode 2, 5 Things Moms Can Do to Learn a New Skill in 15 Minutes or Less. I'm linking it in the show notes. But at some point, you're going to likely find that you're still having to learn in this crazy environment. This has happened to me so many times when I've tried to learn something as a mom. I often talk about how cooking is a real challenge for me. I have to learn new recipes all the time, and sometimes we are hosting dinner parties or having guests over, which then have to get eaten in front of family and friends, right? So there is sort of an ultimate test of whether it's even edible. I am not great with crafty projects, but sometimes to show up as a mom, it means doing these things and projects with our kids. Multiple times, my kids have wanted piñatas that were very special and custom. For example, when one of my sons was really into Star Wars, I actually created a piñata that was in the shape of the Death Star. I totally learned how to do it through YouTube, got the supplies, and rolled up my sleeves and figured it out. And it was a wonderful birthday party, and it wasn't perfect, but it did the job, and it ended up being the main attraction, and my only regret in the end was that I didn't actually get a picture of what I'd made. Here's another thorny example. In 2020, I took about a 1.5-year pause from work. And after that, I was ready to get back into the game, and I had to go back and start interviewing for jobs. And that was so crazy. I hadn't had to do that for like 10 years. And I had to do that in front of people that I actually knew. Like they were in my professional network. We had crossed paths before. And that was so nerve-wracking. And one of the best examples I can give you is this podcast. I basically learned how to podcast and launch this podcast show from scratch, building a business now, all in front of both people that I know and complete strangers. So it's natural to worry about maybe making a mistake while others are watching, or maybe hesitating to even start or try your new ideas out because you might get judged by people. You actually aren't alone if this is how you feel. One of the statistics that I came across is that 29% of the US population experiences persistent anxiety. That's about 87 million people. That is how common it is. And so being a mom doesn't make us any different when it comes to experiencing fears. Today, I'm going to be talking about a specific kind of fear, which is having to learn in front of other people. Well, for each of those things that I talked about, the examples that I gave, I felt really vulnerable because I was trying something new. I had this nervous energy that was really holding me back at first from starting. For example, with my podcast, I had an idea that did go through some iterations, like it started off as one thing and kind of evolved into something else, but I didn't take action on it for 2 years because I was worried about what people thought. I didn't want to have to try something so out of my field of expertise and do it in front of people who could then leave reviews like I'm just asking you to do in this episode. So instead of being held back by our fear, what we really want is to be able to make progress in our personal goals, despite the fact that we don't have a lot of private space or time, that other people are going to be around us, watching us, and potentially judging us. We want to feel confident about trying new things, even when there's an audience, and we want to learn new skills efficiently, even when our environment isn't conducive to learning, when it might actually be really chaotic, in fact. I remember when I first decided to start this podcast, I was so worried about what people would think about my choice and about my proficiency because I didn't have any experience. So far, at that point, remember I said for 2 years, it was just an idea in my head. But I knew that at some point, I really needed to commit. So after holding on to my idea for about 2 years, I finally decided to do something about it. It started with just talking about the topic, that idea. And then after a while, I started bringing up that topic as being something I would discuss in the form of a podcast. And then once I got over that mindset block, I was able to start taking action on my big ideas. It really was this ball that was gaining momentum once I got it rolling. So I started off imperfect, messy, and not without drama. And guys, still to this day, I am learning so much and I am not doing things perfectly at all. And I've already confessed in a previous episode, actually all of my early episodes and my intro and outro were recorded with my mic backwards. So the quality of the audio probably improved somewhere after episode 3. The point is that I took action and I learned along the way. So now I'm going to teach you about how I was able to take action from my ideas and turn all that nervous energy and fear actually into something that was productive and motivating. So the first thing is something that you hear me say a lot. We are role models for our kids. We have to model that growth mindset for our children. If we let our fears hold us back from doing things that we want to do, our big ideas, maybe a new job, whatever it may be, then what are we teaching our kids? That once fear sets in, that's enough to just stop and not move forward. That's not the lesson we want to teach them. So these are the high stakes we're talking about. Our choices and what we do in the face of challenge or fear, that is going to have a lifetime lasting impact on our kids. And so we have to be very intentional and power through some of these things that might hold us back, because we don't want that to then in turn affect future generations. We have to show them how not to shy away from a challenge or an opportunity to grow and explore and improve, because we want them to experience those things as well. So unless there's some sort of logistical barrier, fear alone should not be a reason why we don't do something. And if we're worried about learning in front of other people, there are ways to overcome that fear. And we have to show our kids that that's the case. So how do you do that? Well, with honesty. Tell them what you're doing and what you're feeling, what the possible outcomes are going to be, and why you're going to persist. So with my kids, I tell them, for example, I'm trying a new recipe. Do you have any tips? Do you think I'm going to be able to do it? This is why I'm a little nervous about trying it, because 50 people might be eating my meal afterwards and I've never used this recipe before. Do you want to help me? And if you're on my newsletter, you know that I share this kind of raw honesty all the time about the business. And when you're having these honest discussions, they're not meant to be excuses or caveats per se. Really, they're just explaining the reality of the situation, and your feelings and your fears are totally real. In fact, when we explain what we're feeling to our kids and then we take action despite those fears, they are better understanding how you can overcome those things. So not to be negative, but the reality of the situation is that things may not go our way and that we might fail. But we're going to do it despite knowing that that's a possible outcome. And so if you tell people before you do it, especially if you're doing it in front of your kids, it can be sort of a dose of accountability. But more often than not, your kids are going to be your biggest cheering squad. The next thing I want you to think about is that doing the thing is an important part of learning anything. We can learn through passive means and active means. When you acquire information by reading or video or talking or watching, well, those are kinds of passive ways of learning. But to really understand something means experiencing it. That is how you're going to have a concrete understanding. It'll be more tangible, and you're really engaging all of your senses. And when you engage your senses, more neurons are firing off. And remember, neurons that fire together wire together. And that is why experiencing something is such a powerful way of learning. Now, taking action is the only way that you're going to be able to turn your big ideas, whatever vision you have. We talk about vision all the time when we're life planning. If you want to be able to learn all the things so that you can turn your vision into reality, you're going to have to learn and do the thing. And given our mom lives, we're going to have to do those things in front of our families, in front of our friends, in front of the world. So the next thing is to address the fear head on. You don't actually need to convince the fear to go away. Running away from your fears actually gives that anxiety more power. So what I like to do is actually let that fear have its moment. I actually start going more biology. And as a scientist, that's an area of comfort and understanding for me. So I start thinking about what's happening in my body as I'm starting to feel fear. I create this self-awareness that I'm starting to feel uncomfortable and feel afraid of something. So I start thinking, oh, well, that is my amygdala that's starting to activate. The amygdala is that primitive sort of lizard brain part of your brain. It's in the limbic region of your brain. And when the amygdala is stimulated, you actually start getting all these physical symptoms, right? You start sweating and your heart rate goes up, and you might even feel sort of faint or a little lightheaded. But these physical symptoms actually precede your consciousness of being afraid. when I start to feel myself being afraid, I start turning and paying attention to the physical symptoms I'm having. And I say, hey, this is normal for me to feel this way. It is a part of my biological design and it has its role, right? In nature, anxiety actually has a purpose. Its function is self-preservation, because if you see something that can be dangerous to you and you start to experience fear, that is telling your body that you need to get yourself out of danger and potentially save your life. But in our modern world, we sometimes feel anxiety for things that aren't what I would say real fears. You can have real fears or sort of phantom fears. And the real fears are the ones that are useful. They're meant to protect you and guide you. But these other fears, these phantom fears, are the ones that cause you to be paralyzed when you really don't need to be. And so I sort of deconstruct the whole situation and work backwards. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so afraid. I'm too scared to do X, Y, or Z. And then I start saying, okay, what am I feeling physically? And I start noticing what's different in my body. And I start telling myself why those symptoms are occurring. And then I start checking in. Is this a valid fear, or is this sort of one of those fake fears? I'm basically learning to address my fear, give it its moment, but then not let it disrupt my life. You don't want your fear to paralyze you into taking action, or to accept the fact that society is telling you that this is something that's scary. But most successful entrepreneurs have experienced fear, and the successful ones were the ones that weren't deterred by it. So if you want to learn something that's going to allow you to later have impact in the world, to do something that will help you add value to the world, you're going to need to start overcoming some of these fears of learning in front of other people. And the other thing that you can accomplish by overcoming this fear is overcoming the perfectionism, because basically that is your fear of being judged, and that's why you need it to be so perfect in order to move on. So I'm going to take a little bit of extra time to talk about pushing through this fear. I told you that I kind of start noticing my physical symptoms, but I also start assessing other things. I start checking what triggered this fear. What are my thoughts about it? And then I think about what my knee-jerk reaction is emotionally and behaviorally to this fear. And when you do this kind of quick body and mental scan, you eventually are going to start seeing patterns, and you're going to see what types of things set fear into you. If you start noticing that fear tends to set in every time you have to learn in this sort of chaotic environment or in front of other people, eventually you're going to start seeing patterns of what is consistently triggering it. And sometimes you might even be able to proactively manage those triggers so that you can push forward and do the thing that you're trying to do. And just as a side note, in terms of judgment by other people, what I have found is that usually people give us more grace than we tend to give ourselves. My kids always see the best in me. I am constantly critical of my performance and things. That's just how I am. That's how I push myself. I'm not like an overly negative person, but I tend to focus on the things that I think I could improve because I'm constantly wanting to improve. But my kids will often tell me, Mama, that was awesome. You did such a good job. And they will lead with all these positive things about me. The same goes for other people in my life. My friends and family often inquire more about what my experience was rather than the result. Like, they just care that I had fun doing it or that it was something that I found useful. They don't really necessarily stress or worry or judge over my actual outcome or how good I was at something. An important part of learning, period, but also especially in front of other people, is having to learn by failing. That is just going to be part of the journey, and it's inevitable. Now, I don't want you to confuse mistakes with failing, okay? Because mistakes are not failing. You will learn every time you make a mistake. There's something to be learned. When you combine your mistake with a lesson, that actually is success. If you want to solve something or create something new or have impact, you have to be willing to fail. And as long as you learn from the process, even though you think you're taking steps backwards every time you fail, you're actually moving forward and making progress. It's just not visible progress. The way I like to think of it is that failing to me means that I've tried. I've taken the first step. That is the most important thing. Once you make that first step, so what that you tried and it didn't work? Learn from it. It is an experiment. Then try it again. Try it slightly differently. And figure out one thing that you can do to make it 1% better, to make it that much closer to being what you need it to be. Needing to change those things also doesn't necessarily mean that you failed. But if the outcome isn't what you want, just know that you have plenty of opportunities to refine that. That is part of the process. That by definition is learning. So when you're changing things, that's not coming from a place of shame. You shouldn't feel bad that you have had to try again and do it differently. That should be from a place of devotion and that you are learning and curious about what needs to be improved on. And then every little thing that you refine all adds up. It's hardly ever, I have an idea and then I take action and it's perfect. And I know that the perfectionists in us want to only take action when we know it can be perfect because so many other eyes might be on us. However, the real process, the realistic process, I should say, is that you start with your vision or your idea, and then you're going to take action, as imperfect as it may be, as messy and drama-filled as it may be, and then the most important part of it is the refining, getting feedback, and making it better. And sometimes that last step is the step that we have to do over and over and over again. That's where we spend most of the time. If you let your fear hold you back, you're going to spend most of your time in just the idea phase and you'll never take action. I'm going to give you a quick anecdote. This part about learning by failing is literally the story of my PhD. I was in a laboratory-based program in molecular pathology, so we constantly had to test out our ideas through experimentation. I took 6 years to get my PhD. My first 4.5 years were all failed experiments. I mean, I had a little bit of successes here and there, but overall, it felt like 4.5 years of big idea that didn't pan out, big idea that didn't pan out, assay that I developed that wasn't quite correct. And guess what? Every time something failed, I'd troubleshoot and I would change one parameter, one variable at a time. And each time I was learning something and I'd get closer and closer. But finally, probably around year 4.5, 5 is when something just sort of clicked. And once something started working, it made it easier for more things to work. And I probably, out of my 6 years, spent one good hardcore year, maybe a year and a half of really strong experiments that kind of unfolded the story of my dissertation. And then I spent the last 6 months actually writing my dissertation. So I would say in that 6 years, if somebody were to look on the outside, it was 4.5 years of failed attempts. But guess what? At the end of it, I did get success and I did get my degree. And it's the same degree that any other person who went through my program went. And the last thing is just trusting that you're going to be able to figure it out. You are a high-achieving woman, you are independent, and you've had so many prior successes. So each of those required that you had learned something new. At some point, that was a new thing for you and you figured it out. That doesn't change once you become a mom. Those successes are still part of your story, and now you're learning something different. You're learning something new, and it's not any different when you have to do this in front of other people. When you figure things out, it's going to boost your confidence. When I was first starting off my career, I did an internship. Now, the thing about this internship is that my entire graduate degree was in the field of molecular pathology, but what I was doing my internship in was completely different. It had to do with statistics and pharmaceuticals. And so all of the research methodologies and all of the analysis was completely different. I mean, not just a little different, like very different techniques. But I had decided that this internship was really important to launch me into the particular career and positions that I wanted to pursue. And so before I tell you what I did, I want you to know that it ended up being a very successful internship. In fact, this internship was only meant to be a temporary thing, and the company I did this with never hired the interns that came through the program. It was just meant to be a training program and let them out into the world of industry. And instead, for me, it was such a good fit that they made an exception and hired me. So what did I do? So first of all, I started off with what I think was the right attitude. I had this confidence mindset in my abilities. I said that if I keep trying and I just buckle up, I will be able to figure this out no matter what the problem is. So having to learn as a mom and having people around you while you're doing that, again, doesn't change that. You can still come in with an attitude of confidence that no matter what, at some point, you're going to be able to figure it out. Also, when you're trying to learn something and do something, there are many different grades at which you can try, different magnitudes of your attempts. And each one has a different cost to it if you were to mess up, right? You can mentally assess what you think that cost might be and pick the right level of attempt. You can start and test things out gradually, right? So as an intern, I didn't choose to take on the biggest, hardest project and say, hey, I'll do this for you. I started off with easy things. I decided that I would offer help with writing emails. You know what? That was a learning process for me because the terminology in this field was completely different. And I thought one of the best ways for me to learn the terminology was by having to reply to client emails, because then I'd have to respond with the correct language as well. So in this way, you can start off gradual with your level of comfort and move up, because as you gain experience, that the risk of you messing up goes down and you can start taking higher cost risks. For me to have messed up a large project, which could have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, is not something I was willing to do as a novice in the field and as an intern. Now, by the end of the internship, I was working on very big projects and I did have big, hard responsibilities, but that was something I worked my way up towards. So in general, when you're trying to learn or solve any problem, no matter what the environment, some good techniques include first assessing what you know and what you need to figure out. And where there are gaps, you then have to decide, okay, how am I going to acquire the information to complete those gaps? And then whatever work you have to do, whatever steps you have to take, break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. And then very importantly, you can keep things simple by addressing one thing at a time. Well, learning about learning has been so fascinating, and learning itself is a journey, especially when we have to navigate it in front of others. And so throughout this episode, we've explored how to embrace that learning process even when we feel vulnerable. So I really hope that you had your notebooks out, because I think I shared many golden nuggets of self-help today. We covered several practical strategies to help you grow and learn confidently, particularly when others are watching. So let me recap those takeaways. First, we discussed how being a role model for our children means that we have to embrace new challenges openly. Then we talked about why hands-on experience is crucial for actually learning something well. Third, we tackled how to handle your fear by using a page out of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT techniques. And four, we looked at why failing is actually a vital part of the learning process. And then finally, 5, we talked about building trust in your ability to figure things out. I actually created this episode because a few of you shared with me that learning new things as a mom, while you're juggling family life and doing things in this crazy, chaotic environment, especially when there's people around you all the time, it just feels so overwhelming, right? Well, trust me, I get it. As moms, we often learn and teach simultaneously, and that is actually pretty challenging. So remember, feeling hesitant about learning in front of others is completely normal. But with the mindset shifts and practical solutions that we discussed today, you can turn that fear into fuel for growth, or take action on the next new thing you want to try, or master that next new thing you want to learn. So thank you for being here today, and don't forget about the contest. Get your reviews in and check the show notes for all of the information again if you need that. Then be on the lookout for my notice on Friday in case you are the lucky winner. I wish you the best of luck with the contest, and I can't wait to read all those reviews. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other ambitious mamas about it. Who knows, you might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Solve for Mom podcast with Anoki Kapasi.